Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of... Okay,
This is Rodgers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rodgers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick! Plays it in at the buzzer! That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome back in to Gamecock Pod Live for March the 20th, 2024. And it was on this day in 2008, I met my bride-to-be in Dallas at American Airlines Arena by happenstance watching the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks. And it was also on the first day of March Madness, which kicks off tomorrow. So let's jump right into our Nana's Porch news, notes, and headlines brought to you by that award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte, North Carolina area, Nana's Porch. Whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, a backyard bash with a whole hog barbecue, which you could do any weekend during March Madness, Nana's Porch has got you covered if you need to bring in a food trailer for a special event. Nana's Porch voted among the top 3 food trailers in the local Charlotte area by the newspaper poll. And as we all know, the award-winning pimento cheese voted both number 1 and number 2 in the meat and cheese category by the North Carolina Specialty Foods Association. Support this Gamecock-owned and operated business by going to nanasporch.com. That's NANASPORCH.com. Get in touch with my good friend Chris Payne and support this Gamecock-owned and operated business. All right, Lamont Paris, no shock, named to a finalist for 2 more prestigious National Coach of the Year awards, named one of 20 finalists for the 23-24 Jim Phelan National Coach of the Year, and one of 25 finalists for the Ben Jobe National Coach of the Year. Ben Jobe coached for Frank McGuire at South Carolina. And when Frank had to take a medical leave of absence, Ben Jobe changed everything. Frank liked to walk it up, play 2-3 zone, score 60 points. Carolina was breaking the clock, scoring over 100 every game. He came back, McGuire's like, "What's been going on here?" He's like, "Oh, Coach, well, they don't listen to me. You're the man." But he got them to play different. So the Jim Phelan Award is named for the legendary bow-tied coach who spent his entire head coaching career at Mount St. Mary's University, leading them to 16 Division II NCAA tournaments, 5 Final Fours, and a national championship. The recipient of this award is determined by a 10-member voting committee, which consists of current and former head coaches, as well as 2 senior staff members of collegeinsider.com. The Ben Jobe Award is named in honor of one of the most iconic coaches in the history of basketball at historically black colleges and universities. He was at Southern University, where he held the post for 12 years, Alabama A&M, Alabama State, Talladega, Tuskegee, and South Carolina State. The recipient of this award is also determined by a 10-member voting committee, which consists of the same criteria. Paris, SEC Coach of the Year, and a semifinalist for the Naismith National Coach of the Year. 2 Gamecock women honored by the U.S. Basketball Writers Association. Camila Cardoso named to the first team All-America team, along with Cameron Brink from Stanford, Paige Beckers from UConn, of course, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese from LSU, and freshman Juju Watkins of Southern Cal. Tahina Paopao on the second team, along with Aaliyah Edwards, Hannah Hidalgo, Mackenzie Holmes from Indiana, who South Carolina could face in their bracket, Elizabeth Kitley from Virginia Tech, who will likely miss the NCAA tournament with an injury, and then Paopao. All right, the Gamecock men holding a practice today in Pittsburgh ahead of tomorrow's 4 p.m. tip against 11 seed Oregon, winners of the Pac-12 tournament. That game tips at 4 p.m. on TNT. All right, Clemson has joined Florida State in filing a lawsuit to leave the ACC. Quoting from a CBS Sports article, Clemson says, quote, the ACC's position regarding the grant of rights, the exit penalty, and obligations owed by members to the conference, as detailed in its public statements and other court filings, leaves Clemson with no choice but to move forward with this lawsuit. Clemson has not given notice that it is exiting the ACC and remains a member of the conference. Well, I really don't think you sue the conference unless you're planning on leaving, and I think both them and Florida State want to join the SEC, and Mike Gillespie might have something to say about that, being the Gator that he is. All right, Gamecock baseball scored 9 runs in the 4th inning en route to a 14-8 win over USC Upstate. Gamecocks are now 16-5 on the season and host Vanderbilt in a critical 3-game series at Founders Park beginning on Friday. Those are your Nana Sports news, notes, and headlines for today. All right, let's go out on the guest line and welcome in my man, Mike Gillespie, now formerly the sports director from WOLO 25. Welcome in, my friend. It's been a while, and we're super excited to catch up with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's nice to be on the air somewhere.
All right. So tell us what's been going on, what led to the decision, how your family's doing, your dad. Obviously, You're still a newlywed.
Yes, I am.
What's been going on in the life of Mike?
Yeah. So I can't talk about it too much, but I did get the news last Wednesday. So it's been a week now that I would no longer be employed at ABC Columbia. So take that as you will. But so I can't talk about it too much. But it was definitely a little bit of a shock. But I worked my tail off there for 10 years, and I think I left it better than when I found it. And Tim Hill did the same thing. Tim was great at so many things that I wasn't. And then I came along with, being a younger dude and, helped sort of transition to the digital age and stuff. And so I've been enjoying life at home. I've been a dog dad to my 80-pound golden retriever. My wife is still working full time, and I'm hoping to collect unemployment now for the next couple months.
All right. So are you starting a podcast?
I don't think so. I like being a guest on podcasts. I don't know if I can, I don't know if I'm good enough to start my own. So I'm good with being on somebody else's podcast and letting them do all the work.
Well, we certainly are glad to have you back on the podcast, and you've been a fabulous guest here. It's all right. So I really want to talk Gamecock basketball, but now you got Free Shoes University and Clemson both suing the ACC.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it just seems like a play to blow up the grant of rights, to get that thrown out in court.
Yeah.
And I think by the time the new college football playoff contract kicks in 2026, and there's at least 14 teams, and the SEC is probably going to 9 conference games. I mean, from the Florida perspective, do you want to play 9 SEC games and then play Florida State as the 10th? I mean, I look at it from South Carolina's perspective. I mean, look, Florida State and Clemson are the 2 schools in the footprint that are the most like SEC schools, and regardless, they recruit like SEC schools. Mm-hmm. They have money. They have NIL. They have everything. They have national brands. And to me, I just think it makes sense. I mean, if I'm South Carolina, I want to play 9 SEC games, then play Clemson, then open the season against Virginia Tech or Georgia Tech or Florida State or Miami or whoever else that's, coming up, NC State. I think they got contracts with almost all of them coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting year and a half here. And the process started a while ago, obviously, when, Florida State filed the lawsuit, and that was just the sort of the tip of the iceberg. I think I would be surprised if it is the SEC. I think Florida State, anyway, from the people that I've talked to down there, they are, I think, more interested in the Big Ten. And, a lot of people don't think about it from the TV perspective too, so the SEC, right, has the SEC network. That is a huge moneymaker for them. The SEC network already exists all over the place in Florida. So adding another Florida team really doesn't do much for that brand. Adding somebody like North Carolina or Virginia certainly does, because you can get that base package, that base cable package of the SEC network now in North Carolina or Virginia. And a lot of people sort of overlook that part of it, but I think that's a very crucial part of all of this. The Big Ten, right, does not have a footprint in the Southeast right now. So that's huge too. But yeah, I loved what you said a few minutes ago. You're not going to stay in a conference that you're suing, right? I'm not going to stay with an employer that I'm suing. Wait, what? Did I say that? Yeah. So anyway, it just doesn't make any sense to do that, right? So you're not going to stay in a marriage when you're suing the other person. It doesn't work like that. So, I mean, I think by the time this thing, really the playoff really does expand, it's going to be a whole new landscape of college football. It is anyway, but it's then going to involve Florida State and Clemson. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if it was actually the Big Ten.
I mean, look, though, I could certainly see that. I mean, there would have been earlier rumors where there was definitely a lot of talk about that, mostly on Clemson's part.
Yeah.
But now, do you want to play in all three time zones?
Right.
You want to play go to Rutgers, go to
California.
Iowa.
Yeah.
Or go to Washington or California or Oregon. I mean,
right.
That's really a tough deal. Now, I know, the Big Ten and SEC, they are the kings of the TV contracts. And now with this new college football playoff deal, every member institution from the Big Ten and the SEC will get an additional $21 million per year on top of what they're already getting. And I think everybody in the SEC is going to get at least $51 million later this spring. So,
right.
I mean, I just think the greed continues. Now multiple, you transfer every year. Arkansas's got a point guard that transferred from like Washington after his freshman year. Now was at Arkansas. Maybe he was one of the ones in the love triangle. I don't know. He's in the portal again. I don't know where it ends, but
well, it's greed everywhere now. It's greed from top to bottom, and that was always my fear with how things were going in college football. I was all for players getting paid, NIL. The problem is that, there's really no cap on it. And I think sort of they put the cart before the horse, the proverbial cart before the horse. And, look at that kid, who went to, was it Iowa? Went from Bama to Iowa. They raised $100,000 to get this kid. Iowa did. And then he puts his name back into the portal, takes the $100,000 and goes back to Alabama. Like, how awful is that? That is terrible business. And we're teaching these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds that, hey, that's okay. But listen, that doesn't fly when you get out into the normal world. That's a way to, cut ties with people very, very quickly. Those are horrible business decisions. And I think the NCAA has to look at this, and we've got to have some sort of regulation. I mean, good God, because there is none right now. And I know I'm in the vast majority of people saying that, but whether it's a governing body or something, there has to be some sort of entity that prohibits this stuff from happening.
Well, I don't know if Congress, they don't get much of anything done, but Nick Saban and Greg Byrne did appear before the U.S. Senate. Yeah. And I thought Nick Saban laid it out.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like you said, you squirt the toothpaste out of the tube, it's not going back in. So you got to go out and get another, tube of toothpaste. Right. I mean, they've got to have reform. They've got to rein it in. They've got to, I think, like the NFL, put a salary cap on it. Everything has to be disclosed. And so it's to be determined.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, when you talk about these athletics directors and, the president's decisions to either stay in a conference or leave the conference, it is all about money, in my opinion. It's all about money. And, don't forget, too, the SEC could very well say, and I don't really see this happening, but they still could say, we already expanded. We've got Oklahoma, Texas. We're not interested in doing another expansion for another 10 years. That's on the table too. People don't talk about that enough. It's not just, okay, Clemson and Florida State decide they want to be in the SEC. There are two sides to this. The SEC has to say, okay, fine. well, we're going to take you now and we're going to make it worth our while. So, there's that part of that too. And it could very well be that Greg Sankey says we're good. That what we like the way the product is right now. I don't know if I see that happening, but it very well could.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you could honestly, you could get to 24 pretty easily. Certainly to 20 if you took Clemson, Florida State, and then you took North Carolina and Virginia. You could take Virginia and Virginia Tech. NC State and Virginia Tech. So that'd be 6. That'd be 22. I'm sure you could find a couple more. Maybe, I don't know, another Texas school and Louisville. I mean, we'll see. Yeah. All right, so here's what we can talk about. Okay, and the result is to be determined, but your thoughts on Lamont Paris and what he's done with this team in year 2, going from 11 wins to 25 wins, getting the first win in the SEC tournament since 2018, 13-5. And they really kind of gave away a chance to win the regular season, or at least a share of it, when they blew that 16-point lead to LSU. But 7 SEC road wins over Tennessee, over Kentucky. They beat Mississippi State twice, which to me is really impressive considering what Mississippi did to Tennessee in the SEC tournament. Mm-hmm. Ranked as high as number 11, finished ranked number 15 in the AP, 16 the coaches poll, the SEC Coach of the Year, and I mean, just remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, especially when this has been talked about ad nauseum, but I mean, this team obviously was projected to finish last in the SEC, right? And you go from that, and that just also goes to show you how much the media actually does follow basketball, by the way. I mean, and I can say these things now because I'm not employed anymore, but they have these things in October, right? What are we talking about in October? We are fully ingrained in football. So these guys all of a sudden for 1 week make the I'm talking media members, make the transition into covering basketball. Right now, there are a lot of reporters who know what they're talking about, but there are a ton in this conference that don't. And it's very clear, and it's put on display every single year. It was last year too. They've never gotten the thing right. I don't even submit anything, by the way. I don't even submit my opinion because it doesn't really matter, or I haven't in the past. I can't now, but to be able to take a group of guys and it almost like I don't want to say like a team of misfit toys, but it did kind of sort of feel like that at the beginning. That's like, okay, you've got some really good young talent, everyone's saying great things about Colin Murray-Boyles, and then Michi obviously is coming back, and we all saw what he was able to do. But then there are just a bunch of pieces that just like, can they make a run? Maybe, NIT would be good. But I mean, when you're talking about wins over Tennessee, Kentucky, a Florida team that could do a lot of damage in the next couple weeks, Mississippi State twice, anytime you beat an NCAA tournament team twice in the same season. But I also think the thing that goes overlooked, yes, those wins are great, but you know what used to get Frank, right? The teams that he wasn't supposed to lose to, right? Like, and so you're sitting there thinking, how the hell did you lose to Georgia in the SEC tournament? Like, that doesn't make any sense. This team was top 4. This team was supposed to make a nice run, and they didn't. Lamont, those guys didn't really lose a lot of games that they were supposed to win. That LSU one hurts. It does. That's one that sticks out in my mind. That's probably the one. But I mean, other than that, like, it really, Georgia at the beginning of the season, at the beginning of the SEC season, but that one at home against LSU, I think, stings the most. But for the most part, Lamont was able to guide the ship pretty steadily. And I think that's exactly what you want in a head coach anywhere. get a few wins maybe against the teams that you weren't supposed to beat, but don't lose to the teams you're not supposed to lose to. And I don't think that gets talked about nearly enough.
I agree. So, I read off South Carolina's resume. Certainly they didn't have the most challenging non-conference schedule.
Right.
But in the final analysis, and we did this on Monday with the blind resumes, having South Carolina still at like 51 or whatever in the net, when Duke is number 10 in the net, and the resumes are not that much different. Even New Mexico and Boise State in the 20s, right? I mean, South Carolina, they went on the road and they got quad one wins. I mean, they beat the Texas A&M team that looked pretty damn good in the SEC tournament. And,
Texas A&M at the very end of the season there.
I mean, the win in Knoxville, before that, boat racing, Kentucky. I mean, it's astounding to me. And I don't know how you reconcile it. I know it's a tool, but still the NCAA selection committee came up with the net. They replaced the RPI.
Right.
And then you have number 32 in the net, St. John's, with 20 wins, and a Hall of Fame coach, by the way, and Rick Pitino.
Sure.
They get left out. Number 40, Pitt, they get left out. 43, Wake Forest gets left out. Now I realize, they had to fit in NC State because they won 5 games in 5 days.
Automatic qualifier. Yeah.
Yes. They got the AQ. So, that probably cost somebody. But I don't know. I mean, all the bracketologists had South Carolina on the 5 line, and then you come out and maybe because you had 2 blowout losses to Auburn, who, by the way, got screwed by the committee, in my opinion. They're number 5 in the net, and they're a 4 seed. They won the SEC tournament. Tennessee got boat raced and didn't. I mean, they lost their regular season finale to Kentucky at home, and then got boat raced by Mississippi State in Nashville, which is basically a home game. And they're a 2 seed. And so South Carolina ends up as the last 6th seed. And now they get Oregon, who's as hot as anybody, winning the Pac-12 tournament. Dana Altman, I remember when I was a young high school coach at Greenville High School, everybody on my wing were all Furman graduates. They hated Marshall's guts. They called them the Thundering Turds, right, instead of the Thundering Herd. He was the coach. He's been at Oregon since 2010. I mean, he's been to a Final Four. He's won 4 Pac-12 tournaments and 4 Pac-12 regular seasons. He's won 754 wins, 16 NCAA tournament wins, and Nafali, Dante, Jermaine Cousinard, Kwame Evans, who's a 6'9",
they're a big team
forward.
I
mean, it's not a great matchup for South Carolina, but Nafali Dante, he went 12 for 12 against Colorado from the field to be the MVP of the Pac-12 tournament.
He's also 6'11".
Yes. And let's face it, BJ Mack, he can't jump over the Chapin Yellow Pages. No. That's not a good – I mean, he's crafty.
Yeah. Right.
To me, Josh Gray's going to play a pivotal role
Yeah.
in this game. He's going to have to.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I mean, look, Florida's big too. Florida's one of the bigger teams in the SEC. They've got multiple guys who are 6'10" to that 7'1", all across that little spectrum there. They're a big team, and South Carolina was able to play Florida pretty well just based on how they shot the ball late in the second half, right? And I think that's the same thing that you want to see against Oregon. Can guys like Michi Johnson, who hit so many timely shots against the Gators, can he do the same thing against Oregon? That way you don't have to drive inside and go against those guys. If you can figure out some ways to shoot the ball either on the perimeter or close to it, you may be able to come out with a win without having to pound it in the paint that much. And I think remember, this team, doesn't turn the ball over that much, right? Their assist to turnover ratio was amazing. I haven't really looked too much in the last couple of weeks, but it was trending to be, one of the best in school history. And this because you're a lover of college basketball. But it's exactly how Wisconsin won basketball games under Bo Ryan, right? Like you pass super well. They literally, I was reading this a few weeks ago. Bo Ryan, used to carve out a time in practice where they would literally work on passing drills, right? Like that's all they would do is passing drills. And just the ins and outs of like moving your body to make a really good pass. And, I think you're seeing the same thing under Lamont Paris, who obviously studied under Bo Ryan in Wisconsin, but, the efficient passing, low turnovers, high assists. And I think that if they can take that same recipe that, they've won with this past year in the regular season, I think they can, obviously make some noise in March. I mean, the jury's out too on that. I actually wanted your opinion on this, Keith. Statistically, right, over the last 15 years, it's not in your favor to go deep into a conference tournament. Like when you're looking at NCAA tournament results, right? And now a lot of people will say, well, you kind of want to take the hot team in basketball and follow them into, but that doesn't necessarily translate. A lot of teams that wind up going far in their conference tournaments wind up getting bounced early, either in the first or second round. So, I know Gamecock fans kind of look at Carolina's performance in the SEC tournament and they say, wow, I mean, they got blown out by Auburn. It may not have been that big of a deal at the end of the day. I know you never want to lose a game, but, at the end of the day, the research certainly shows that, with the exception of some outliers that were just incredible, basketball teams, teams that will go down in history as some of the best of all time, it's certainly not that advantageous to go deep, in a conference tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind it. Obviously, it's not a good matchup. You would have liked to have been more competitive in that game. I kind of think the committee held that against South Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, I got to say, I've said this. I'm going to say it for your benefit so you can hear it. Like, Florida to me was a matchup nightmare. I couldn't believe all the bigs they kept running in there. And is it Walter Nolan, the guard?
Walter Clayton. Clayton Jr.,
yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Honestly, South Carolina, I think, has no chance on a neutral floor or in Gainesville winning that game. I thought the home crowd in the final 10 minutes of that game made the difference. And quite frankly, Florida made it to the championship game, and they had, one of their key players, unfortunately, go out with a not very good leg injury early on. But, man, if nothing, the SEC has prepared South Carolina for this game because you've gone against all those bigs from Florida. You've gone against Kentucky's bigs. You've gone against Tennessee, Tolu Smith at Mississippi State.
Auburn's defense.
Right, Auburn, like AT
in the SEC.
in the Nana Sports chat box says that's the benefit of playing in the SEC is the variety of teams and personnel and styles of play. And outside of Auburn, South Carolina was extremely competitive in every single game. I mean, the second half of that Alabama game got away from them. That was the second game of the year, though.
A long time ago,
And so South Carolina is kind of built for a deep run because they guard you.
Mm-hmm.
They force you to play defense. And they don't turn the ball over.
Right.
And so, I mean, 5-12 and 6-11s are kind of coin flip games. It seems like that 5-12. There's a lot of those. But I mean, just speak to bringing in these transfers, the development of guys like Josh Gray, Zach Davis, Jacoby Wright, who's been big at different points in the season. Talon Cooper, man, he's the glue of that team.
Yes.
I think Talon Cooper and CMB and Michi, as they go, so go the Gamecocks. Because South Carolina's been able to win games when BJ Mack has not performed very well.
Yeah, and I mean, it goes without saying, but you've got to have a group of guys that can make really timely shots too. And I think time and time again, this is a team that never really seems like it gets rattled. I mean, look, that game against Tennessee really could have gone off the rails pretty quickly. I mean, it could have. Like Tennessee control, in my opinion, I was sitting right there courtside, and I'm like, this is Tennessee's game. I think everybody can feel it in the building that Tennessee they came to play. But Carolina never was out of that game, even at the end. Like they really weren't. And that fight is exactly what great NCAA tournament teams are all about. They don't get rattled, then they make timely shots. And, Michi's done it all year. Murray Boyles has done it. Cooper. I mean, these guys have a way of stepping up and sort of delivering in a very calm manner. And it's really refreshing to see because, there are a lot of teams that I've watched in the SEC. I've watched every Florida game this year. I've watched every Carolina game. Sometimes, when you look at Florida's guards, they seem very erratic with the basketball. It's almost like, can y'all take an Adderall or something? Because it's just, you're all over them. I mean, it's like, and they want to play extremely fast, right? Because that's Florida's MO. They want to play very, very quick. But I really do love the fact that, Carolina slows it down. And by doing that, I think it brings out some calming qualities in its players too, because it's okay. Hey, look, we're going to set this thing up. We're going to take our time. We don't have to score every 10 seconds. We can get a good look. And I think that's shown all season in their mannerisms, to be honest with you, Keith. I mean, I really do. I think it's had a great effect on Lamont's players.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. And you go back to 2 years ago, in that Illinois game. By the way, shout out to that dude who was on Frank Martin's original coaching staff at South Carolina. He has been unbelievable, but I mean, they went up against Kofi Cockburn, who's a mammoth guy, a lot like Nafali Dante, and Lamont Paris's team, they led for like 38 minutes of that game.
Yeah.
And they were clearly out-talented. I mean,
right.
I think that was like a 3-14 game.
Yeah.
And they had a chance because of the way that they play the game.
Right. And, again, it's this, no one's necessarily wrong here, right? Like if you take Todd Golden's philosophy and you take Lamont Paris's, okay, Todd Golden wants to score as fast as possible. It's basic. He says it's basic math, right? The more shots that you put up, the more points you're going to score. Okay, that's great. Well, Lamont, on the other hand, says, okay, now, but in those shots, there's percentages, right? And you have to get a good look here. And just because you're putting up a shot doesn't mean it's going to fall. And if it's not, this is just basketball 101, obviously, but if it's not a good shot, the chances of that basket going, or that shot going in the basket is pretty low. I really do like, especially in just his second year, I love that, he's letting his players sort of take their time with things. And like I said, I think that's part of the reason why you've seen such a level-headed team. And this team went 12-4 on the road and in neutral sites. 12-4. I mean, that's insane. Like anybody who's betting this week on the NCAA tournament needs to look at how teams play when they're not at home, because there's a big difference there, right? One of the reasons why I'm like, can Auburn really get it done? And I was very skeptical before the SEC tournament because Auburn's one of those teams that's so freaking good at home, but on the road, not so much, right? So, but they were able to prove that they could win on a neutral floor at the SEC tournament. But when you look at teams that are really good away from home, South Carolina is right up there with the best. And in a really tough league, they were fourth best in the NCAA in that win percentage in, true away games and neutral court games. Fourth in all of the NCAA, fourth. And, that to me is just, coaching, right? That's all about coaching, getting your guys in the right, position, getting them comfortable, going on the road, getting in a routine, a schedule, being communicative with your players when you're on the road. So that to me is probably the best. Like we can talk about the overall record, right? But, not losing games that you're not supposed to lose, right? And then going on the road and getting some really tough wins this year. I think those are the two best things that Lamont was able to do. And it shows with USC from top to bottom. It shows with their players how calm they are.
And so maybe I'm going to extrapolate from one sport to another, but I like the fact this game is in the Eastern time zone. Oregon, yes. 3 games in 3 days.
Yes.
They got to fly all the way across the country. Mm-hmm. I like that. Mm-hmm. And you've also got the Jermaine Cousinard storyline.
Sure.
He's their starting point guard. And, even in that tournament, he was hot or cold. I don't know that Oregon has been defended the way that they are going to be defended by South Carolina. Now, my guy Mick Cronin, UCLA, the first round, not his best team, clearly 68-66. So, yeah, I like that. But on the other side of the coin, I think the X factors are you got to have good Meechie Johnson, not 1 for 11 Meechie Johnson.
Right.
And you need good Miles Stute as well off the bench. I think they start Zach Davis. He's been playing really well since he quit trying to be just a 3-and-D guy and started going to the basket and using his length. To me, those are the keys. And then, if CMB or BJ Mack can get Dante in foul trouble, I don't know that Oregon – I don't know. It's hard for me to watch Oregon basketball. Their floor is it really brings on a vertigo attack for me. I just can't watch it. So I haven't watched a ton of Oregon basketball, but they were not an NCAA team when they arrived in Las Vegas. They had to win it
right
to get there. South
much
Carolina,
like NC State. Yep.
Right, just like NC State. Although NC State, I mean, you talk about a team that was running on fumes and the tank could still be empty. NC State, and I'm sorry, DJ Burns was unbelievable, the Rock Hill native. But that dude hadn't been 275 since he was a ninth grader. They listed him at 275. He looks exactly like Big Tree Babalade, except 4 inches taller. So, but I've never seen a guy that big with that soft a touch, and especially left-handed. And plus, I kind of like that they got it over North Carolina. I agree, Craig. He's 320. That dude looks like he come rolling in the arena with a 20-piece KFC bucket and a bag of biscuits. For the pregame meal. But I digress. All right, so a lot of Dana Altman influence in South Carolina's bracket. If they beat Oregon, they're probably going to play Creighton, which Dana Altman spent a long time at Creighton. I mean, 1994 to 2010. And Creighton has been unbelievably good.
Yes.
And they are a 3 seed, and they've usually been uber athletic, very long. And I can't say I've done the scout on them, but they did get a 3 seed. And so not a Power 5. I mean, I guess they're kind of in a Power 6 because they are a basketball program. What do you think Lamont's chances are to make it to next weekend? Or next week, I should say.
That is a very good question. I like Carolina against Oregon for, a few of the reasons that we already mentioned, right? I mean, Oregon having to travel, all the way from West Coast to East Coast. I mean, that can't be overlooked. It's going to be a very early game for them. It's going to, 4:00 for Carolina, 1 p.m. When was the last time Oregon played a 1 p.m.? Maybe they did in the Pac-12 tournament. I'm not sure, but it seems to me like their games were a little later. So, I mean, that's pretty early in the day. And, USC has played so well on the road. So I like USC against Oregon. I would take that. Creighton seems like one of those teams that could make a very deep run this year. They're super balanced. I don't know if I like that matchup for USC, but again, there were a lot of matchups that I didn't love for USC this year that they wound up taking. Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida. Those 3 teams right there. I didn't project Carolina to beat any of them, and they did. So it's sort of find a way and. Things that never go old, man. I mean, this in basketball. If you can play really good defense, you got a shot. And, look at, Frank. I mean, that 2017 team, right? I mean, they had a guy in Sin who just was playing out of his freaking mind. But they also clamped down when it mattered most and held these, high scoring offenses and kept them in check. So, I think if you play really good defense, you have a chance. And that's what USC's been able to show all year. So I know that's a kind of dancing around the question, but I would pick USC to beat Oregon and then probably lose in the second round, to Creighton. But, again, I've been wrong a lot this year. So.
I mean, I can't wait, and I hope they do get to play them.
Yeah,
right?
I do too.
You definitely hope Saturday afternoon Gamecock fans everywhere are watching the Gamecocks play. I mean, I'll take it. All right, so
for sure.
More remarkable, Lamont Paris or Dawn Staley losing all 5 starters and 3 reserves from an undefeated team and becoming only the second Power 5 program to UConn to have back-to-back undefeated regular seasons, 47 consecutive SEC regular season wins, and a 58-game home win streak. And for the 3rd year in a row, they're the number 1 overall seed, and they would have been as well in 2020 had that tournament been played. And so for the last 5 years, and Dawn Staley has been to the Final Four each of the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
She's got another perfect season. Is that more remarkable than what Lamont Paris has done, considering who they lost?
Yes, I think so. And that is pretty crazy because there's not much that's better than what Lamont Paris was able to do with that group of players this year and their low expectations. I think it gets overlooked because of the fact that Dawn Staley is so successful and that program just keeps rolling. And, it's almost expected at this point. And that's, truly a feather in her cap, right? I mean, it really is, right? Like that is, and she'll take that any day. She'll admit that she wants that. She expects that for her program. She expects these expectations for herself. But yeah, to lose all 5 starters and to also go through the schedule that they had this year. They played, let's see, Notre Dame and Paris, by the way, so nowhere even close to home or in their time zone. They knocked off Maryland. They knocked off UConn. They beat Tennessee barely, but they did, twice.
3 times.
3 times. That's right. 3 times.
Utah in Connecticut on a neutral floor.
Yes. I mean, these wins were extremely impressive. It's not like they had an easy schedule at all. So I gotta say that's even more impressive. I mean, anytime you can go undefeated, right? I mean, there's nothing better than that. So
I mean, they'll have a chance to really claim the ACC championship because they won at North Carolina, at Duke.
yeah,
They both raised Clemson, so they're 3-0. They could face North Carolina again in the second
they could.
round. I like the Gamecocks in that one because I just think they're playing so much better. Like the young players, like
better than they were.
Wiley, Tessa Johnson, Ashlyn Watkins, Kits, and if Malaysia Fulwiley gets enough room to get one off, it's going in.
Yeah. Well, and I
meant to say Pow Pow.
Oh, Tahina Pow Pow. Yeah. Well, and Fulwiley. I mean, she's not like I wouldn't say the greatest pure shooter right now. Right. She's also just a freshman. I mean, and what she's able to do with the darn basketball is just beyond me, man. I mean, I like some of the plays that she makes just, and she was doing it in high school. We covered her in high school. And I remember thinking when she was like in 10th grade, I mean, she was doing like fake behind the back passes and going up with the finger roll. And I'm like, you're 15. How are you doing this? But it's just sort of in her DNA. She's always been that way. But yeah, Tahina Pow Pow, it was nice to see her start to make some shots there at the end against I think it was Tennessee. Wasn't it against Tennessee late there? I believe it was. Yeah. Sorry, that seems like so long ago, but but you're right. I mean, you can't leave her open. She is the by far the biggest 3-point threat on that team. But a lot of people aren't really talking about this because I don't know if it's really going to matter. But Cardoso is going to be out. Dawn Staley confirming that this week. That's big-ish news, I guess. I don't know. I mean, she's the leading scorer, right? So it's the story, and ESPN's going to obviously touch on it during the telecast. But at the end of the day, right, like the last 5 first-round games, USC's won by an average of 30.
Yeah, so tonight, Presbyterian plays Sacred Heart for the right to get boat raced by South Carolina on Friday.
Right.
Like, I don't think last year was at Norfolk State. I don't think they scored in the first quarter of that game.
Yes.
And by the way, South Carolina did play Presbyterian on December 16th. The final score was 99-29. And South Carolina held the ball for like the last 2 minutes to not score 100 points.
Yeah.
So, and
it's a super classy.
70. 70. Okay. Not 30, not 40, not 50,
70.
not 60.
Yeah.
70. Now, the 8-9 game, you know, you got North Carolina, Michigan State, Indiana, and Oklahoma. Oklahoma is sneaky good. They beat Texas twice. Yesterday we had on a live stream, we had NCAA Women's March Madness. We had Corey Diaz, who covers LSU.
Yeah.
He used to cover the Gamecocks for the Greenville News. Emily Adams, who now covers UConn, who covered the Gamecocks, and Peyton Titus from Go Gamecocks.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a poll, anonymous, and Oklahoma's coach, Indiana's coach, Florida Gulf Coast. You want to draw up an offensive game plan, all of those coaches got votes. Dawn Staley dominated the defensive game plan.
I bet.
I think it was Gino, the coach from Oklahoma, and somebody else got 4. On the defensive game plan, Dawn Staley, 12 votes.
Yeah.
But to me, it's not the starters. Obviously, they will move Ashlyn Watkins in the starting lineup, just like they did when Cardoso was out.
Playing with Brazil.
They rested her, or when she was in Brazil. I thought Ashlyn plays better as a starter. She doesn't get into quick foul trouble as a starter. But after that first round, Cardoso will be back, and then good luck, because then they're bringing in Ashlyn Watkins off the bench. They're bringing in Fulwiley and Tessa Johnson, who, by the way, led the team in three-point shooting in the SEC, and Sanaya Fagan, all McDonald's All-Americans.
Right.
And so, to me, it's not just the starters, but it's the second wave for South Carolina. When you look at their opponents, other than Texas, nobody else plays 9 players as many minutes as South Carolina does. It's usually 7, maybe 8, like LSU.
Yeah.
Okay. Stanford, not incredibly deep. Notre Dame, another injury. Okay. Olivia Miles not playing. They are the 2 seed. And so last year, we all thought it was basically a foregone conclusion South Carolina would win the national championship. They didn't, because all it takes is one lousy officiating crew, or one player twisting their ankle, or one player getting in foul trouble.
Sure.
But is this the team that came in the season without the expectations? Can you see this team cutting down the nets in Cleveland?
Yes, 100%. Now, would I be surprised if, you know, that first loss came somewhere in the NCAA tournament? I wouldn't be as surprised as I was last year. When they lost to Iowa, I think everybody obviously was very, very surprised, because that team was deep. It was talented. I mean, one of the most talented rosters in the history, you know, that Dawn Staley might ever have, to be honest with you. I mean, that roster was just loaded. But again, you know, Caitlin Clark was just she's just a different beast. I mean, she's a different animal. And, you know, that's what it takes too sometimes in March Madness, a guard getting really, really hot from everywhere. But yeah, I think at the end, I could totally see USC cutting down the nets just because of their depth. I think that's the biggest part of this team is, they wear other teams down over time, and you see it, like even the best of the best in the SEC this year, they were able to hang right in 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden it just, they don't have the fight. They don't have the strength because they're not fresh, because there are only 6 or 7 players, whereas, Carolina's playing, 10 or whatever it is. So, yeah, I mean, I think just their depth alone, and of course their talent. But, I think that they just sort of impose their will, as Dawn Staley would say, on their opponents. And good luck, good luck, because it's tough to run with them. I mean, when they get out in transition, I mean, it's a thing of beauty, man. It really is. That their transition game is just, it's almost perfect. It's almost too perfect, so along with that, their efficiency there, and then their depth, I think, yeah, they can totally win the whole thing. I mean, I honestly, I don't, maybe you think there's a team out there right now that could beat them. I mean, maybe Iowa, maybe again, I don't know. But again,
we broke it down yesterday. I don't think, unless there's just some kind of agenda, I don't think Iowa's coming out of that bracket, because I don't think they're beating UCLA or LSU, whoever wins that game.
Yep.
And Kansas State and Colorado is the 4-5 game. Kansas State beat Iowa with Akoya Lee when she was healthy in Big Ten play. And Colorado, I mean, they didn't just beat UCLA to start the season. They beat a lot of teams. I mean, it's just a much tougher deal for them. And then if they survive that, then they got to survive Juju Watkins and Southern Cal probably, or Paige Beckers and UConn, or Ohio State. I can't really pick them until they do it. They never live up to expectations.
Right.
But to me, the difference is, I guarantee you, Dawn Staley would have probably traded Bree Beal for Tahina Pau and anybody for Malaysia Fulwiley and Tessa Johnson, because nobody in the country can stop Malaysia Fulwiley except Malaysia Fulwiley.
Right.
She locks you down because she's finally, after getting yanked out of games in December for 3 minutes, after 3 minutes for not playing defense.
Right.
I mean, she is relentless because of how quick and fast and athletic she is.
Mm-hmm.
And her picking Flau'jae Johnson's pocket and getting ready to go in for a layup started that whole fracas or skirmish in the SEC tournament. But just that, and her ability to take people off the dribble. And then if she's hitting from outside, I mean, she's just like Hannah Hidalgo.
Yeah, me. I don't know how you, once she starts hitting shots consistently, like very consistently from outside, she's a matchup nightmare. Because how do you guard her? I mean, she can beat you off the dribble. So, and if she starts knocking down shots, well, you got to bite on the fake, right? So, I mean, that's going to be amazing to watch over the next couple of years. Yeah, I mean, your original question, man, I don't see anybody taking down USC. Maybe LSU, maybe, but at the end of it, like USC has already proven twice that they're better. They're even better in a fight.
Angel Reese can say she's not scared of South Carolina all she wants to. She was not even in the TV screen during any of that stuff. Okay. And all the trash she talks, the 2 flagrant elbows, one of which was completely missed, the hair pull,
hair pulling,
all of that. If she wasn't scared, she would have been involved of at least taking care of her team.
Yeah.
She didn't want to get near Cardoso or Ashlyn Watkins.
I wouldn't either.
I don't blame her. And so, hey, Mike, I know you got to run. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you so much for having me. It's really, really nice to be, to be back doing, to be back talking sports. There we go. Words. So I really, really do appreciate it. And anytime you need me, let me know. I'm a free man now. So
hey, I'm gonna keep you to your word on that, because I'd love to get you back maybe next week to talk some Gamecock football.
Sure.
I know you got to go. So again,
let me check my schedule. Let me check my schedule for next week. Oh, look at that! I'm totally free.
All right. Well, open invitation to join us anytime. Appreciate your friendship. All the best to you and your family, and next steps.
Thank you so much.
And we'll catch up with you again real soon.
That sounds good. Thank you so much, Keith.
You're welcome. Take care. All right. That was my good friend, Mike Gillespie, and one of my favorite Gators, probably right behind Steve and Jerry Spurrier, although Jerry's really a Gamecock, because she finished her degree at South Carolina. And wouldn't surprise me if they don't follow Dawn Staley and her team. I don't know if they'll go to Albany, but wouldn't shock me to see them in the stands this weekend in Columbia or in Cleveland for the Final Four, because Jerry and the head ball coach love Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks. All right, so Shane Beamer met with the media yesterday. We did play the best of his opening statement. I thought just to recap, and if you got questions or comments, like AT and Craig have been in the Nana Sports chat box, jump on in. I thought some of the more interesting things were, one of the things that was a major concern from the players' perspective was they were working their tails off, and then they go in on Saturday and their opponents are all bigger and stronger than them. Well, Shane Beamer made it a point to mention that his football team has gotten bigger, stronger, faster. They made a lot of progress. I thought that was interesting for sure. Obviously, you're coming off a disappointing season. You make some changes on your coaching staff. You replace a god-awful running backs coach and recruiter with Marquell Blackwell, who's been a coordinator, who's coached Kareem Hunt and Quinshaw Judkins, and been around some of the best offensive minds in college football. Dana Holgerson, Lane Kiffin, Jimbo Fisher, and Bobby Petrino at Texas A&M, although that was kind of dysfunctional because Jimbo wanted Bobby Petrino to run Jimbo Fisher's offense, not Bobby Petrino's offense. To be determined. Mike Furry coming in after the departure. When did Mike Shula come on board? Is he an analyst? I know there was some folks that were commenting about South Carolina getting some big-time analysts. Maybe that's a Dowell Loggins connection. I do know that both offensive coordinator Dow Loggins and defensive coordinator Clayton White met with the media. I have not read that. That will be tomorrow's podcast, along with maybe some Final Four predictions. We'll get to that. But bringing Sean Elliott back, I think obviously getting a guy like Joe DeCamillis to replace Pete Limbaugh is huge. Pete Limbaugh, I didn't know that you could get a better special teams coordinator. And Shane Beamer proved me wrong, and he did. Losing James Coley, I don't know what the fallout, what the change in that will be. You know, I know losing Mike Bobo to Auburn and hiring Marcus Satterfield was not good for South Carolina football. I do think Mike Furry, with his background, the fact that he knows all the high school coaches in the Carolinas and has spent 4 years mining for players, finding diamonds in the rough to go to Limestone. Look, if you've ever been to Limestone, players are not lining up to go play at Limestone. But I do think he's probably a better coach than either Justin Stepp or James Coley as far as being able to teach and develop guys. Will he be able to recruit? I don't know. I mean, we've already seen Malik Clark getting the wide receiver from Rock Hill, getting crystal balls to Clemson. What's up with that? By the way, evidently Craig says Dow Loggins mentioned Mike Shula. I do think it's invaluable to have a guy like him on staff as an analyst. That guy, he didn't win enough at Alabama, but you know, he left there. He coached in the NFL for a long time. His dad was one of the greatest NFL coaches of all time. So, you know, I think that's a great get. I mean, quite frankly, I wish Clayton White was hiring somebody like that. I still think that dude needs all the help he can get. I think, you know, Shane Beamer decided to bring him back because of, you know, the close Kentucky win, Clemson not scoring an offensive touchdown. Look, another thing that was brought up, look, let's face it, after those magical weeks of beating Tennessee and Clemson, South Carolina was busted in the transfer portal. I mean, they just were. Yeah, they got Trey Knox. They got Nick Gargiulo. They got Jaron Willis. They got a D2 running back who was pretty good, but would have probably been like fourth team this year if he would have come back and been on the roster. Shane Beamer talked a lot about the defense, about improving the quality and the depth up front to be able to stop the run. You know, you added to Boogie Huntley, Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders, and Nick Barrett. You added DeAndre Jules and Kelly Goodwine. I think those guys help you from a depth perspective. You also, Jerome Simmons, who won't be in until the summer, 6'4", 335-pound JUCO guy. If there's a position on the team that's upgraded more than defensive end, maybe and linebacker, to me, those were the two positions that were upgraded the most through recruiting the transfer portal. Not only did you double the number of scholarship linebackers, Bengali Kamara and Demetrius Knight, it wouldn't shock me if both of those guys if they're not both starting, one of them will be starting and the other one will be playing a lot. And Wendell Gregory and Fred J.R. Johnson are freak athletes. I said it. Craig knows I said it all year on the podcast. Those two guys are different from any linebacker Shane Beamer and Clayton White have signed. Okay, no offense to Pup Howard and no offense to Stone Blanton. Pup Howard's a defensive end. Okay. Stone Blanton is just a guy. I mean, he had that play against Jacksonville State, but all Jacksonville State had to do was keep running the damn ball, and they probably win that game. And then 4-8 versus 5-7, that's a whole different deal. I really like the quality, the depth, the athleticism, the flexibility of the positions at linebacker. Craig just mentioned corner is a huge concern for me. I don't know why. 2 years in a row, South Carolina has not brought in a corner out of the transfer portal. And look, it's not like O'Donnell Fortune is Cam Smith or Darius Rush or Dante Robinson or Horn, J.C. Horn or McQuamu or even Johnny Dixon, who left and went to Penn State and has been a starter there. He's average at best. And then the other guys are all completely unproven. Okay, yes, Judge Collier played a little bit. And I thought he played well. I mean, hell, I would have probably started him at corner and moved Marcellus Dial or Fortune to nickel because nickel was an issue. I do think the Kilgore brothers will be just fine there. Emory Floyd, Vicari Swain, and Judge Collier, those three guys may be the most important three guys to make a move during spring practice other than your wide receiver core. Okay, C.J. Adams, the only guy you got with size right now because Nicholas Harbor, who's really not a natural wide receiver, is running track. He's not practicing this swing or this spring. And then, other dude breaks a finger on spring break. That was the only guy that wasn't 5'11" or 6 foot in your wide receiving core. Okay. Jalewis Solomon, geez, we wish he was here. You have to hope he's as good as J.C. Horn, who was good enough to come in the summer and start immediately and be great. Craig, I think he's going to have to be that good. Either that or Torian Gray has got to really work a miracle with O'Donnell Fortune, Judge Collier, Emory Floyd, Vicari Swain. 3 of those 4 guys are going to have to really step it up and play. And quite frankly, you're much better if O'Donnell Fortune is not one of your top 2 corners, or at least not your number 1 corner. Now, can Carolina find a guy in the next transfer portal? I don't know. I know they're going to upgrade at wide receiver in the next transfer portal period. There's at least one guy out there that was planning on coming. We'll have to see if that's still the case. I mean, South Carolina's on their 3rd wide receivers coach since that guy gave, a wink. Remember Tommy Bowden in the in-home visit? Well, you don't have to tell me, but if you come and just give me a wink. Well, I know Carolina had a wink in December from a guy that wants to graduate and then come in as a grad transfer. So we'll have to see. I mean, wide receiver is a major concern. Yes, you have Jared Brown, you have Gage Larvadane, you have the kid from Louisville that's from Dillon. You got Tyshawn Russell, who played some. Okay, but Caldwell from Rock Hill, he really needs to step it up. Okay, Kelton Henderson really needs to step it up. Can Mazeo Bennett or DeBron Gatling step up enough? Is it another transfer? I don't know. I don't think South Carolina's receiving group is set because Harbor's not going through spring. And I do think there will be more additions in the spring transfer portal period. But corner is a major concern. Wide receiver is a major concern. I do think Mike Furry will coach his group up and make guys better at being able to get off press coverage, running more precise routes, and catching the football, and making them good blockers, because in the National Football League, you better be able to block. So, look, having a quarterback that's never had to do it before, even though he is uber talented. I mean, what happened? Spencer Rattler made it through without ever getting injured because he was not a running quarterback. You brought in Sean Elliott. Your offensive line should take a big jump. I mean, spoiler alert, he's not just the tight ends coach. He's the run game coordinator. He is going to be very hands-on with the offensive line in coaching the offensive line and coaching up Lonnie Teasley to coach the offensive line on the personnel, where guys are going to play to fit the run schemes and the pass blocking. The good news is you got a lot of very talented guys to work with. I thought Phil Kornblut asked one of the best questions, asking about the 3 freshmen that are enrolled early now, all from South Carolina, and Marquis Anderson. Okay, some of those guys are going to play. Craig, I do agree tight end is a strength. And thank goodness Trey Knox is gone, because that's my only beef with Dowell Loggins, other than having not a really good plan against Clemson. And maybe it's because they were just overwhelmed up front. But Joshua Simon was the best tight end on the roster last year. I think he and Brady Hunt could really form a dynamic duo to help there. Maybe this is the year the 12 personnel has to really help your wide receiver core. But I do think that's to be determined. But, you know, Big Tree Babalade got a lot of experience last year. Trevon Ball got a lot of experience last year. Vershawn Lee is back. Marquis Anderson was going to play had he not been injured. He's 100% now. Kason Henry was going to start at right tackle until he got injured. Can he stay healthy? That's a big question for me, because he hadn't been able to do it in 2 years. Hopefully he can stay healthy. You know, but Josiah Thompson, he just may be too good to keep off the field. I mean, he's literally like one of these guys that goes to Texas or Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State, and he's in the starting lineup come September, because he will get bigger. He will get stronger. He will become even more athletic. And the talent is there at left tackle. You know, Blake Franks, probably a guard. Cam Pringle probably needs a year. But if any freshman can come in and start and be a difference maker and be ready to play, it is Josiah Thompson. The guy is elite, you know. The first 5 they ran out there yesterday with Ja'Kai Moore at left tackle, Marquis Anderson at left guard, Vershawn Lee at center, Ball was at right guard, and then Henry was at right tackle. They're going to run 5 different guys out there today at practice. Okay. Or maybe it's tomorrow. Yeah. Today is a day off, Thursday, and then Friday they got the coaches clinic. So that will start to take shape. Sean Elliott will be critical in that. Okay. Herrera taking over at place kicker. That's a big deal. Joe DeCamillis, how much can he help him? I think a lot. Okay. Does Mason Love get involved? I know there's another preferred walk-on Shane Beamer mentioned yesterday. Kai Kroger needs to rebound from, you know, when he was injured, they probably rushed him back because they really didn't have anybody else to punt. He needs to have a big year like he did in 2022. Like that Clemson game. He pinned them inside the 10-yard line, like I think 4 or 5 times, and inside the 20-yard line 8 or 9 times. I mean, it was unbelievable. So special teams, I think you got a lot more athletes to be a lot better. Quite frankly, special teams were not special last year. Joe DeCamillis, now he gets to put his fingerprints on that. And Pete Limbo moves on as a head coach. But he was outstanding. And we will see what Joe DeCamillis does. We'll see, you know, look, running backs, Rocket Sanders, we know what he can do. He doesn't have to really go out and prove anything to anybody this spring. He's got to get healthy. Juwan Howell, stud. Okay. Oscar Attaway, the third, really, really good back. Okay. You got DJ Braswell, who played at the end of the season. Shane Beamer said he may be the fastest player on the team. That dude's 200 plus pounds. Okay. You know, Craig mentioning Brady Hunt. I think your tight ends will be involved on special teams. J.R. Johnson, Wendell Gregory, all these linebackers, a lot of your DBs will be on special teams. Very athletic guys. Freakish athletes. J.R. Johnson was all 5A, which I think is the highest classification in Virginia, as both a tight end and was the defensive player of the year. Led his team to the state championship. He is a dude. What a great evaluation and early get that was before that guy blew up. So I do think the defense should be much improved, because if you're not that great at corner, the best solution for that is to be really good up front and to have great, you know, pass rush ability. And I think with JT Gear, with the return of Gilbert Edmond, with Kyle Kennard, with Dylan Stewart, okay, with Brian Thomas Jr., with Elijah Davis who can slide inside. I think, you got a great Rabbits package, and who's to say Wendell Gregory or J.R. Johnson's not one of those outside 4 guys, or Jaron Willis, quite frankly, because he can load it up with speed guys. South Carolina's defense is going to be critical with a new quarterback, with a freshman quarterback. There's going to be a lot of dual threat. There's going to be a lot of zone read. Okay. I mean, you got to be able to run the football. And so we will see exactly what happens with that. So tomorrow we'll get to the coordinators. Nickel and safety will be fine. You got Spalding back. He's healthy. Oh, I didn't even mention Mokaba, who Beamer said should be fully healthy by the spring. If you could just get the type of season from him you got a couple of years ago from Sherrod Green, that would be awesome. You got the Kilgore brothers and David Spalding. You got Nick Emanwari, DQ Smith. You got other guys at safety. The depth should be great there. Corner, a concern on defense. Wide receiver, a concern on offense. And quite frankly, that's why Justin Stepp is no longer the wide receivers coach at South Carolina, because going into year 4, because of recruiting and the transfer portal, it's inexcusable for South Carolina's wide receiving corps to be this inexperienced, period. And I'm a Justin Stepp guy. I do think he was really good at developing guys that the previous staff had committed and signed, like Xavier Legette, like Josh Vann, like Jalen Brooks. But who was he responsible for? Because I can tell you, he really didn't play a role in Juice Wells coming to South Carolina. Okay. That was Shane Beamer, who was a teammate at Virginia Tech with the high school coach, getting that done. So now it's on Mike Furry. Not only is he got to develop all of these dudes, you need to bring in more guys before the season, and then you got to restock the cupboard. You got to go out and get SEC quality guys. Can he do it? He's never had to do it. Just getting guys in the Carolinas would be a good start. So that is going to be a wrap for Gamecock Pod Live today. Appreciate everybody tuning in for the second day in a row. We didn't get to 100 plus today like we did last Wednesday and yesterday on our women's basketball March Madness. You can go and give that a listen if you're not a patron. That's on the YouTube page. You can also listen to that wherever you get your podcasts, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Radio, etc. So appreciate you guys in the Nana's Porch chat box, and to everybody who tuned in. Until tomorrow, when March Madness and Quarter Zip Thursday arrives. Today's Quarter Zip Wednesday. Tomorrow will be Quarter Zip Thursday. Then Friday, you got the women. Hopefully, you've got the men on Saturday and the women on Sunday. And today will be the last day without Gamecock men's and women's basketball, at least through this coming weekend. And we hope both of them are in the Final Four, and we're hoping one or both of them's cutting down the nets. That would be remarkable as well. So until tomorrow, this is Keith Alsep saying, go Gamecocks. God bless you all. And I'll be back tomorrow on Gamecock Pod Daily with the best from Dowell Loggins and Clayton White. I am out of here.